Rousseau's natural man versus citizen and other dichotomies. In Jonathan Mark's 1998 article, The Savage Patterns, he navigates the dichotomy of Rousseau's natural man and citizen. He proposes the savage nation resides as a unifier or the medium between the asocial and social implications of Rousseau's dichotomy. The implications of discussing the two topics are thought to be ambivalent and contradictory. If Rousseau exalts one, how can he also, in the next turn, exalt its opposition? Marx argues that the contradiction is actually a means to distinguish the middle ground. In Marx's 1998 words, Rousseau regards the perfect individuality of original man and the perfect society of the denatured citizen as deficient remedies for the divided souls of civilized human beings. In other words, what Marx suggests in the pure images that Rousseau establishes as the natural man and citizen is like a vaccine wherein a small exposure to a disease or its symptoms can work to enact the antibodies to strengthen, defend, and cure the full-blown ailment. Marx uses Thomas Hobbes and Immanuel Kant for different modes of interpreting Rousseau's dichotomy. Hobbes, which used because he understands the necessity of founding natural right on the strongest passions of human beings rather than on reason, who sways us very little on the natural state of which is called into service by the passions. Marx 1998, page 76. Although Hobbes neglects that passions could cloud reason and reason prevent the misuse of faculties, the Kantian view, on the other hand, understands that humanity's return to original nature is neither possible nor desirable. Instead, humanity must embrace its freedom and determination, rejecting nature, which, unlike our physical nature, makes us truly human. Reason, then, as the Kantian interpretation emphasizes, has allowed humanity to emancipate itself from the confines of nature to realize its true potential and self-direction. The Kantian perspective also results from the idea that nature caused humans to be separated from one another, but through humanity's own efforts have bound together, repeating the benefits and suffering the ills that come with being bound together. The savage, being partially cultivated but still residing in tune with nature, is the median that can be extrapolated from Rousseau's opposing sides. Delineating the savage is not easily determined because of the struggles between the passions and nature and the reason of freedom of being fully human. This struggle resides in the navigation between the individual and the collective, which both must be considered to establish the best state for man. One criticism against Rousseau's idea of education for the natural man and the citizen, self-conflicting perception that Rousseau paints for each dualistic perspective. The image that Rousseau paints is, as Menham 2011 terms it, the gentle savage and the fierce citizen. Gentle savages and fierce citizens against civilization is the topic for Matthew Menham's article addressing the topic. For the natural man, Menham writes, on one hand, we find praises for sensitivity, gentleness, sentimentality, and compassion, apparently in keeping with Rousseau's reputation as a proto-romanticist or vanguard intellectual of the modern left. On the other hand, we find comparable enthusiasm for manliness, courage, hardness, and patriotism appeal in keeping with his reputation as a stern moralist or classical Republican. Whereas the citizen is portrayed as, on one hand, moderns are said to be luxurious, lazy, weak, and soft, in opposition to images of primitive hardness, vigor, ferocity, and rustic virtue. On the other hand, modern life is said to be cruel, frenzied, competitive, and harsh, in opposition to primitive gentleness, idleness, abundance, and spontaneity. The perspectives found in both suggest that Rousseau painted the picture of either the natural man or the citizen as it benefits his needs. In one sense, the reverberating perspective is used to validate Rousseau's assumption in another. Rousseau is just providing fodder for his disdain against society and citizenry. The reasoning Mendham, 2011, by way of Judith Schlar's Men and Citizen, provides for Rousseau's back and forth perception is he is providing equal, valid, opposing utopias. The opposing utopias provide a place for all those that align with one utopia to fall into that camp, while still providing a resonance for those who don't align. It is volunteered that the perspectives Rousseau used were influenced by Archbishop Fenelon, who occupied a similar technique as to show these utopias are offered more in the service of diagnosing the emotional diseases of modern civilization than an empirical and attainable alternative. Mendham, 2011, page 171. The reconciliation between the fluctuating perspectives of the natural man and the citizen does not hold the same tenor as Rousseau does not aim to reconcile the two, but to show that one cannot live in both camps. Furthermore, to show the fault in one's own camp by looking at the other would be a counter to being in that camp. In other words, Rousseau paints a dualistic picture where one must completely occupy one camp and cannot be split between the two. Splitting between the two camps would inevitably result in belonging to neither. The modernist perspective painted by Rousseau ultimately does not fit with the postmodern perspective of today. The diversity that comes with being in today's world is much more inclusive for a range of people that live in either camp or in any point between the two. Mendham suggests that through the multiple perspective of dualistic assumptions that can be made for Rousseau's dichotomy of natural man and citizen, one can inform a broadened understanding. As Mendham, 2011, writes, more generally, by interpreting Rousseau's apparently conflicting remarks carefully according to socio-political context, we can discern many consistencies underlying his inconsistencies. Page 185. The multiple perceptions that Mendham addresses for the dichotomy between natural man and citizen can be layered to find intersections that are not exactly located in between the dichotomies, which Rousseau strictly states cannot happen, but may exist as offsets which would provide an even more diverse inclusion than any one of the dichotomies originally suggests. Between law and nature. Jeffrey Smith, 2002, makes reference to the perception of Rousseau being the philosophic hero who is responsible for dethroning nature and instilling will as the foundation of law and right, but then explains Rousseau intends neither to discredit nor to abandon human nature as the ontological foundation of normative principles. Page 1. To clarify, the malleability of the understanding of nature has left it to be ambiguous, if not mysterious, but Rousseau offers through Emile a normative significance. Smith, 2002, in his article, Natural Happiness, Sensation, and Infancy in Rousseau's Emile, is essentially a teleological assessment of Emile as it relates to the man's natural direction. Smith addresses the multiple ways Rousseau uses the term nature.
Do more, do better.